A very good noon and Jai Hind, dear students. Welcome to the virtual class of English. And as we have been discussing a chapter, the enemy, from past couple of days. So continuing with the same, let us begin. I want you all to be just to open the page number 31 in your books, and we have to start from here. She went ahead and slid back the partitions. Sadao was not there. So from here we have to start today. Dear friends, let me tell you quickly that this chapter raises the conflict between your humanitarian side and towards your duties, your responsibilities for your country or your nation. So there was a conflict going on in the mind of Dr. Sadao also, that what should he do? Shall he proceed with his duties of a doctor, or shall he report about the American prisoner of war to his country's army? So which duty shall he perform first? Okay, now let us start. She went ahead and slid back the partitions. Sadao was not yet there. Yumi, following, put down her wooden bucket. Then she went over to the white man. When she saw him, her thick lips folded themselves into stubbornness. "I have never washed a white man," she said, "and I will not wash so dirty a one now." Dear students, stubbornness means firm determination. Okay? Hannah, she went inside that room, and moved the partition to one side. There was a partition in the room and she moved it to the one side. Sadao was not there in that room. Yumi followed, the maid servant. She followed Hannah, Dr. Sadao's wife, and kept the wooden bucket on the floor. As she saw the white man, her thick lips folded, and the expressions on her face indicated her firm determination. She said firmly, she was quite determined when she said this. And what she said? That she had never washed an American man, and that she would never wash one who was as dirty as that injured man. Hannah cried at her severely. "You will do what your master commands you." And Hannah did not like this. So she did not like that the maid servant is showing her denial for this work. And Hannah reacted to Yumi's refusal. She screamed at her that she was supposed to follow her master's orders. There was so fierce a look of resistance upon Yumi's round dull face that Hannah felt unreasonably afraid. Fierce means dangerous, okay, and resistance means the refusal to accept something. That is known as resistance. मना करना किसी चीज़ को. Okay, so after all, if the servant should report something, that was not as it happened. Yumi again resisted very strongly. She denied that, "No, I am not going to wash this white man." And her dull face had a dangerous look of protest. She was having a dangerous look, and she was quite reluctant. And Hannah got scared when she saw her. She was worried that if the servants reported something different from what had happened, they could land into trouble. And that's the reason Hannah was bit scared when she saw the expressions on Yumi's face. "Very well," she said with dignity. You understand, we only want to bring him to his senses so that we can turn him over as a prisoner. Dignity means respect. So Hannah then automatically she changed her tone and she changed her expressions to respect. Okay, and said, very well, okay, fine, Yumi. She explained to Yumi that they intended to bring the unconscious man into his consciousness. They are doing all this just to bring this man back into his senses, and then they would hand him over as a prisoner. उसके बाद दे देंगे वो उसे जेल में डाल देंगे. I will have nothing to do with it, Yumi said. I am a poor person and it is not my business. Yumi, she said that she was not at all concerned about Dr. Sadao and Hannah's plans. She is least bothered about their plans, and she also added that she was a poor person and it was none of her business to know about their plans. Then please, Hannah said gently, return to your own work. Earlier she was saying that you do have to follow your master's commands and everything. She was screaming on Yumi, the maid servant. But later on, when Yumi was quite reluctant, she has a firm resistance on her face. She thought that it's better not to force Yumi anymore for anything, because if the servants will report all the incident to the army, then they can land in trouble, and that's the reason she changed her tone into and bring little bit politeness and a sense of respect, and started conversating with Yumi. And in the last she said, okay, bye, fine, she should return to her own work. At once Yumi left the room, but this left Hannah with the white man alone. She might have been too afraid to stay had not her anger at Yumi's stubbornness now sustained her. Sustained means, students, to continue. Sustained means here continued. Okay. So Hannah said to Yumi that you should return to your work. And Yumi left the room at once. Immediately she left the room. Hannah was again left alone with the white man. She would have been afraid to remain there all alone, but her anger on Yumi's firm determination made her stay in the room. Stupid Yumi, she muttered fiercely. Is this anything but a man, and a wounded, helpless man? Hannah said with anger that Yumi was a stupid person. She said that it was just an injured man. In the conviction of her own superiority, conviction means firm belief here. Conviction means firm belief. So in the conviction of her own superiority, she bent impulsively, dear students, means to do something suddenly without thinking. That is known as impulsive. And untied the knotted rugs that kept the white man covered. Rugs, blanket blonde of light color. When she had his breast bare, she dipped the small clean towel that Yumi had brought into the steaming hot water and washed his face carefully. The man's skin, though rough with exposure, was of a fine texture and must have been very blonde when he was a child. Blonde means light color. So Hana was so full of anger at the refusal by the maid, Yumi, that without thinking, she opened the blanket in which the man was injured. His chest was bare. Hana took a small clean towel, dipped it in the steaming hot water, and washed his face. The man's skin was rough due to being exposed to the sun, maybe, right? But it had a good texture, and he must have been very fair as a child. So now moving to the page number 32. While she was thinking these thoughts, though not really liking the man better now that he was no longer a child, she kept on washing him until his upper body was quite clean. But she dared not turn him over. Where was Sadao? Now her anger was ebbing. Ebbing means decreasing. Ebbing means decreasing gradually. When something decreases, that is known as ebbing. And she was anxious again, and she rose, wiping her hands on the wrong towel. Then, lest the man be chilled, she put the quilt over him. Chilled means here freeze due to cold weather. So Hana kept on cleaning the man's upper body, as she had these thoughts that in his childhood that man must be very much fair in the complexion. She did not like the man, as he was not a child anymore. She did not have the courage to turn him over and thought of Sadao. Her anger was decreasing, and she started becoming restless. She stood up and wiped her hands with the wrong towel. As she did not want the man to freeze due to the cold weather, she put the quilt on him. Sadao, she called softly. He had been about to come in when she called. His hand had been on the door, and now he opened it. She saw that he had brought his surgeon's emergency bag, and that he wore his surgeon's coat. So Hana called out to Sadao very softly, and he had been on the door when she called him. He was almost there at the door only. He opened the door. Hana saw that Sadao was carrying his surgeon's emergency bag and was wearing his surgeon's coat also. That means he was prepared to operate upon the injured man. You have decided to operate, she cried. Yes, he said shortly. He turned his back to her and unfolded a sterilized towel upon the floor of the tokonoma alcove and put his instruments out upon it. So sterilized, I hope you all must be knowing, sterilize means to disinfect something. And tokonoma alcove, that is the word toko literally means floor or bed. Okay, toko means floor or bed. Ma, tokonoma. Ma means space or room. So in English, tokonoma is usually called alcove. So it is a part of a room where things are displayed. Okay? Or an alcove in a Japanese home for displaying a flower arrangement kekemono or other piece of art. So basically it is a you can say Japanese term or an English term that means a space in the room where things are displayed, जहाँ पे चीज़ों को डिस्प्ले किया जाता है, उस जगह को टोकोनोमा एल्कोव बोलते हैं. So Hana, she asked Dr. Sadao that had he decided to operate the man, to which Sadao replied that he had decided to operate him. He turned his back to Hana as he did not want her to object to his decision. So who turned his back? Dr. Sadao turned his back towards Hana because he do not want any sort of interference from Hana. Sadao started his work. He opened a sterilized towel on the floor of the tokonoma alcove and placed his surgical instruments on it. Fetch towels, he said. And then Sadao asked Hana to get some towels. She went obediently, but how anxious now, to the linen shelves and took out the towels. There ought also to be old pieces of matting so that blood would not ruin the fine floor covering. She went out to the back veranda where the gardener kept strips of matting with which to protect delicate shrubs on cold nights and took an armful of them. Hana obeyed Sadao and went out to get the towels. She was curious as Sadao was operating upon the injured man. She thought that the blood from his wounds could stain the fine mats which covered the floor of the room. Okay, she was worried about the mats कि वो blood से गंदे हो जाएंगे मेरे जो अच्छे mats बिछे हुए room में. So she got some rough mats from the backyard which were used by the gardener to cover the delicate shrubs from the cold weather. So they were having some rough mats also which the gardener was using to cover the shrubs during the cold weather. And because she do not want that her very expensive and beautiful mats to be to get dirty by that blood stains would be there, so she decided to remove or to put those rough mats above it. Okay, but when she went back into the room, she saw this was useless. The blood had already soaked through the packing in the man's wound and had ruined the mat under him. By the time Hana reached the room, she saw that blood had flowed through the bandage on the man's wound and had stained the mat beneath him. So her effort to bring those rough mats was totally futile, useless, futile. Oh, the mat, she cried. Yes, it is ruined, Sadao replied, as though he did not care. Help me to turn him, he commanded her. She obeyed him without a word and he began to wash the man's back carefully. Now see, on seeing the stained mat, Hana cried that the mat had been spoiled. And Sadao agreed that the mat had been ruined in such a manner which indicated that he was not at all bothered by it. Sadao ordered Hana to help him turn the man over. She obeyed him and then Sadao started washing his back. Yumi would not wash him, she said. Did you wash him then? Sadao asked, not stopping for a moment his swift, concise movements. Yes, she said. He did not seem to hear her, but she was used to his absorption when he was at work. She wondered for a moment if it mattered to him what was the body upon which he worked so long, as it was for the work he did so excellently. This is a very important line which shows how deeply Dr. Sadao loved his profession. Let us see it in the explanation. Concise means very short. So Hana told Sadao that Yumi had refused to wash the injured man. Sadao asked her husband, Sadao asked her wife, that did she wash him? He did not stop cleaning him. When he was having this conversation with his wife, he didn't stop doing his work. He was continuously cleaning the patient. He made fast small movements of his hands as he cleaned him. Very carefully he was cleaning that patient. Sadao was engrossed in work and did not seem to hear Hana. ऐसा लग रहा था जैसे उसने हाना को नहीं सुना, क्योंकि वो he was very much engrossed in his work. Hana wondered that Sadao was not bothered who the injured man was. He was only concerned in performing his work well. So Hana, she was quite surprised when she saw that Dr. Sadao working upon a patient who is an American, who is an enemy to them. But Dr. Sadao, being a doctor, hardly bothers about it. It seems like he has to do nothing, whether the patient is an American, Japanese, or whatever country he belongs to. It seems like as if he just loves his work and he is doing that work. At that moment, for Dr. Sadao, that injured man was a patient, irrespective of his religion, nationality, or he did not give a thought to all these things at all, Dr. Sadao. And that shows that how nicely, how excellently he was performing his duties. So dear students, I think it is enough for today. The remaining part we are going to study in the next videos. I'll see you soon. Till then, please be happy, stay positive, stay safe, and take very good care of yourself and your family too. Thank you and have a great learning.